All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to official episode 3 of Free China Pod. We have episode 2.1 up on YouTube now, and I'm uploading episode 2 part 2. And tonight I'll probably also upload episode 2 part 3. So we're trying to record this one before Ari leaves the country for a little bit, and then so we have some material to post when he's gone. How long are you going?
Take your time. 10 days, but even when I come back, I'll be a little busy around here, so I probably won't be able to do much.
Yeah, so I may have to record some solo ventures, or I don't know what I'm gonna do. Probably go crazy, but maybe I'll see if Ryan wants to record a little more laid back one. I don't think he wants to talk about politics too much, especially American politics, but I don't know. Maybe I'll get on and do some like little short 30-minute ones where I just talk to myself, but I really prefer to have someone to talk to.
Why don't you ask Abby, man? Abby would be great.
Yeah, I might. She has to like prepare though and be focused, because last time she was not focused.
Just get her before she's two beers deep.
That's about when she can't focus anymore.
I think one beer deep she'll be okay.
Yeah, everyone who's listening, who listened to the second episode, I think she's in part 1 and part 2. Mostly, when did we talk about aliens? Was it the end of part 1 or in part 2? I don't remember.
I think it was. I can't remember either.
Okay, well,
it's all blended together.
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of a big blend of just recording over a couple, like a basically 20 hour period. But anyway, for anyone listening, if you listen to that one, you'll see how unfocused she was for parts of that. But yeah, she's good to have conversations with. I'll try to get her on. We can do a little Chinese language stuff. Wenming was asking me to do a full Chinese language one. I was like, that's a little daunting to like try to do a full Chinese language one, but we'll see what happens. So okay, we'll get into it. We were talking a little bit before about the Trump stuff with so in the New York Times they just pinned a piece about all Donald Trump's financial dealings and basically all the corruption involved in that. So did you hear anything about it, Ari?
Nothing whatsoever. I heard that there were some. I'm trying to remember deep in the back of my head. There were some investigations recently into. I can't remember.
Yeah,
it's not worth it.
Yeah, they've been I don't I don't exactly know when they did this whole investigation, but basically, I did a quick scan of the article because I didn't get time to read it when I was at work. But basically, they found a bunch of stuff from his past, like so Trump's big thing on the campaign trail was, I'm self-funded, I'm so rich, blah blah blah. That's kind of been his thing the whole time. He plays the rich guy, which he definitely has quite a bit of money, but we don't really know how much because he won't release his taxes. But it's looking more and more like
yeah, of course.
Yeah, the reason
he doesn't want anyone to know how much cash he's got sitting around because he probably overinflates it. That's what he always does.
I'm sure. Yeah, that's kind of his MO. So I think another part of it is that he doesn't want people to see all the underhanded stuff he does. Like they said, because he said, I took a small $1 million loan from my father, as if any normal person has ever received a quote-unquote small $1 million from anybody. And he claimed he paid it back, which is farcical because he got a lot of his dad's money after his dad passed away anyway. But anyway, so he basically, the article said, accounting for inflation, he received something like, what did I tell you earlier, like $415 million or something? I'll check. I think it's
That's a lot higher than I thought. I thought he received around 20 million, but maybe that's adjusted for inflation. And
yeah.
Maybe that number is not accurate either, because I think they were just speculating, but it's hard to say.
Yeah, it said the investigation found that he received at least $413 million in today's money from his father's real estate empire, much of it through tax dodges in the 1990s. So I
wonder if that is if that includes cash or if that includes shares in his father's business.
It might.
Ownership.
Yeah, it might. So, but the article talks about there's a lot of like basically gifts that weren't attributed for, like the real big one was, or one glaring example was one time, I believe right after one of Trump's bankruptcies, or when he was in some financial trouble, his father went into one of his casinos in Atlantic City and bought $3.5 million worth of chips from the casino and then just didn't use them, basically got rid of them. So it's essentially just giving him $3.5 million. And if you give any amount to someone of a financial gift of anything over $10,000, I believe the IRS requires you to report it. And $3.5 million is at least a little bit over $10,000. So they should have reported that. And
well, they weren't considering it a gift. They were just considering. I mean, it's a loophole basically. He found a way to get around. I know what you're saying.
I believe it is still illegal though.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it. I believe that was still an illegal thing to do. I'm no financial fraud expert, so I couldn't tell you for sure. But from what I heard people talking about it, it sounded like that was not a legal maneuver that they went through. But there's definitely, aside from even that, there's quite a bit of other stuff that they did that was almost certainly illegal.
Like what?
So he gave. Okay, so here's some stuff from the article. So at 3, Trump was earning $200,000 a year in today's money from his father's empire. He was a millionaire by age 8. When he was 17, his father gave him part ownership of a 52-unit apartment building, and after that, it says soon after Trump graduated from college, he was receiving the equivalent of $1 million a year from his father. It increased with the years to more than $5 million annually in his 40s and 50s. So he's basically been a trust fund baby his whole life. And I don't know how much of that they actually reported. So they really should have done that, because again, you have to report all that stuff. Yeah, so that's not looking real good for him. And Trump, another thing that's going to look bad for him, though that's not even necessarily illegal, is the fact that he basically kind of like downplayed his father's empire and made it sound like he's kind of, he likes to play like he's self-made and things like that. But it turns out like his father basically gave him all the money he's ever made. And clearly he can't make it himself because he's gone bankrupt 6-7 times.
So wait, who's reporting this, and what are they basing that off of? Because it sounds like the newspaper is accusing him of committing tax fraud. Is this the New York Times?
This is New York Times, yes.
The failing New York Times?
The failing New York Times. So Trump is obviously going to come out right away and be like, the failing New York Times at it again with his bogus report.
That's a strong charge, though. That's tax fraud. So if they have evidence for that, I don't know what the statute of limitations on that is, but it's possible they could go to the IRS.
Yeah, I don't know. It just says...
although he is in charge of the IRS.
Yeah.
He's the president now.
See, that's the thing. And now we're getting into the whole thing with...
it doesn't matter. If they have evidence that he committed tax fraud, I think that's justification for impeachment.
The problem is if the Senate doesn't flip, then that doesn't really matter.
It depends on the strength of the evidence. I mean...
I guess, but I mean... I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith in a lot of the Senate Republicans to do anything right, even if they have overwhelming evidence.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see the strength of the evidence. That's shocking. Let me look and see if that's true. When did you see that news?
I saw a video on YouTube today, and this article is from, I think...
Because I haven't seen anything about that. There's nothing about it on...
Yeah, this is from yesterday. It was posted yesterday, so people are probably trying to do in-house investigations to verify all these claims. But
I don't see anything about it. Everything basically is about Kavanaugh. Well, not everything, but like there's almost nothing about Trump for the last few days. It's all about Kavanaugh.
That's because that's the big thing right now is everyone's focusing on Kavanaugh, which is warranted. I mean, that's a super big thing because that's again. Going to the whole impeachment and things like that, like Kavanaugh basically said, I don't know if it would be illegal if Trump, freed people that were connected to him legally. He pardoned them. So this could all be very difficult very soon if Kavanaugh gets passed through.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much pretty much all we can do.
A lot of the stuff in the last few days is that the FBI seems to be running a pretty light investigation. Some of the news agencies are claiming is that there's like 40 something people basically who claim to have evidence and who contacted the FBI to provide evidence and were never contacted back, essentially.
Yeah, there's a bunch of people that I've heard have said that, but it's because the Trump administration greatly hamstrung the investigation. They said they could investigate they could talk to 4 or 5 people. They
took those limits off under pressure, but there's not enough time. I'm not sure how interested anyone is in getting really deep right now, because sometimes the more you dig, the more you have to dig. Yeah,
true. Very true. I don't know. I just think it's preposterous to limit this to a 1-week investigation. I know why they did it, but I think it's supremely underhanded. And if they really had any confidence in their pick, then they would just keep it going. They have 2 more years of Trump, whether the Senate flips or not. But I think the Republicans are real scared right now.
Listen, if they get it passed, they're going to damage their electoral chances for the next several years for 2 reasons. One is that because they'll have 2 Supreme Court picks already in, I think most conservatives will just stay home from the elections because they'll say there's probably nothing else that Trump can do for us for the foreseeable future, because there's no more Supreme Court picks to make, basically. Yeah. Unless Ginsburg dies or something.
Yeah, and what are the Trump voters fired up about? I mean,
there's nothing. If this passes, they lose their fire, but it's also going to damage his standing with a lot of people, especially conservatives. Not only Trump's standing, but the Republicans' standing in general, because basically it shows that it's not morality anymore. It's just about partisan politics. Kavanaugh is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kavanaugh is he's a vote for abortion, but he's a human piece of shit, and there's nothing upstanding or choir boyish about him anymore. And I think that's abundantly clear. He's not. All the shit that came out, basically, all the stories that he made up about what a strong student he was and his strong sets of values, they're all garbage. And it's clear that whether or not he raped Blasey,
attempted to rape her,
whether or not he attempted to rape her, he was like a frat guy, basically. He's just an alcoholic party guy who hooked up with lots of girls and probably skated by in school.
Yeah. They just found a new letter. One of the guy and someone just did an interview with maybe ABC that
You're talking about the house party letter?
Heard little clips. About if any girls want to come over, I'm sure we'll welcome them with open ellipsis. Is what he said. So he's clearly not the most upstanding guy. Not some and someone who is I just don't understand. There's multiple lies he's had, so I don't understand how that's not perjury and how you can't just get him on that. Say, well, you perjured yourself. Sorry, bud. Not only does that show you that you don't have good character because you're willing to come up here and lie on the stand, but in addition, it's illegal. I don't know.
He probably perjured himself in terms of scale. He didn't make maybe blatantly, outrightly false statements. That would be the argument.
Yeah.
That whoever is overseeing the investigation.
So it turns into he's just slightly mischaracterizing. He's not outright lying.
Semantics, but yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think they can't pass him. Like you said, it will literally destroy the Republicans for the next who knows how many years. But honestly, I think there's going to have to be, for the Republicans to win anymore, they're really going to have to revamp their image because they're bleeding voters right now.
I'm really curious to see what their election results are. I think it's a catch-22. I think if they don't pass him, they're going to be in the same situation. It's going to be we elected this idiot and he gives us these rapist Supreme Court nominees that don't get passed. What's the point of voting? Either way, they're not going to be in great shape.
Yeah, any quote unquote middle of the line moderate Republican is is aghast by the stuff that's going on in the Trump White House right now.
Here's the problem. We already know how most people stand. Most people basically vote party line right now.
Yeah.
But if you look at the polling about independents are vastly against Kavanaugh right now. Like it's not even up for debate. Like
Yeah.
the majority of independents do not want Kavanaugh to get passed, and it's not gonna help them if they do that.
Yeah, and I mean, aside from Trump's absolute always Trump base, the average person on the ground, I think even some of the, because there's more and more interviews with these people that were Trump voters. They were like 2-time Obama supporters, and then they were a Trump voter, and basically it seems like most of them don't really understand politics. They just listen to the message that person gives. A lot of those people are saying, I really regret voting for Trump, and that's only going to increase and increase as people, because there's still people that don't understand the situation on the ground. They don't understand that, oh, there's a tax cut, but the tax cut overwhelmingly helps the rich, and it's permanent for the rich people, and it's got a 10-year sunset for a normal person, and then your taxes go up. And I don't want my job shipped out overseas, but he's outsourcing at an insane rate. Only in rhetoric is he keeping jobs in America. He's not keeping jobs in America on the ground. So, and he's destroying our planet. I know a lot of Republicans still don't believe in science. They think it's some fairy tale, but I feel like at some point enough people are going to wake up. That's what I'm saying. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think it's sad. I think there's definitely a need for two strong political parties in the United States. I think that the Republicans are basically shattering themselves as a brand by moving in such weird directions on so many policies and being so against common sense. So, as obviously you know where I stand on the political spectrum, but I think it's sad. I think it's sad for them, and it's sad for an American democracy, because I think the Democrats will get out of control if they get in power for too long, just like most parties do.
Yeah,
no party should have too much power for too long.
I agree. I think one of the things is to let in more parties, so you can have more fluidity. I mean, I don't know.
It's infeasible. It's infeasible with this political system.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You would have to reform it for sure. You have to make it so the bars aren't so high. Because I think if you got a Green Party or like a Libertarian Party, you could split up the vote a little bit, and then but you would obviously have to change like the first past the post and things like that. It would have to change, or otherwise they would never get represented.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that. The American system has survived quite a long time as it is, and European parliamentary style systems with like first past the post, they've got their own issues as well, and especially with like collapse of governments, like I don't mean like dramatic collapses, I mean like no confidence vote in the parliament, just like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I don't know exactly. Go ahead.
For us, we can at least be confident that each time we vote, we'll only have to vote once every 2 years for a set of legislators. But in those systems, sometimes the governments don't even last a few months, and you have elections several times a year.
It's true.
That's all.
It's true. I would agree. I just think a little bit more, at least putting like Green Party people in the debates, something like that, to even if it just changes the dialogue and the rhetoric a little bit. I think that could be a good shot in the arm for American politics.
The debates, you mean like the final debates between the candidates from the two major parties?
I mean, almost all debates. I think, yeah.
Most of the debates are intra-party.
Yeah, especially the final debates. I don't know. I would just say put them up there. Why not? What's it going to hurt?
I completely agree.
Yeah. I don't know. But we'll see what happens, I guess.
I saw some research the other day, and it was suggesting that this doesn't necessarily apply to the United States, but across the world, in lots of governments, that having basically very strong parties for all the problems that it entails with inter-party corruption actually helps the strength of the democracy, because I would assume the mechanism would be that basically when you have stronger parties, it can keep these crazy leaders in check sometimes. When you have like for an example, like a Jacob Zuma or something like that. That before the leader gets completely out of hand and just shatters the country and shatters the democracy, they can pull their candidate back and find somebody new, because that's exactly what they did. And honestly, the same should be done with Trump.
Yeah, and Yeah, that's the thing oftentimes he's not. The Republicans don't really try to rein him in for the most part.
It would be the destruction. They should and they shouldn't. They should, as a matter of like principle, the dangerousness of his rationale and his administration. But on the other hand, it would lead to the destruction of their party if they have Mike Pence, an unelected leader, put in there for essentially no criminal reason.
Yeah, I'm not saying impeach. I mean, I think he should be impeached personally, but not that. I'm not saying replace him with Pence. I'm just saying that's the natural course of action. No, I mean I'm just saying you got to get in there and get him under control. I'm not saying you go out in public or you do anything like that. You can go in there and have discussions with him, but maybe that's impossible with Trump because he's kind of a man-child.
Are you talking about having discussions with him about removing him from office?
No. I'm not talking about removal from office at all. I'm talking about getting him under control. Like saying, okay, hey Donnie, like you can't do this. Like this looks bad for us. It's going to hurt you. Like in the end, I know you have this idea or like, John Bolton told you it was a good idea to escalate with Iran, but like it's not good for the country. It's not good for you. I mean, I'm sure they would have to make it all about him for him to care about it, but you really something's got to be done about him because he's destroying the party as president too. He's making them look stupid, and people are like, this is the face of our party. The Republicans are thinking that, and like you said, independents are going, this is disgusting. It's revolting what's going on with the president of the United States, and the Republicans are seemingly endlessly backing him almost no matter what he does. They'd never stand up to him. In private, it seems like in private or public. Obviously, private is more conjecture because who knows, but...
You know why, though? He won them the first election that they've won in 12 years.
But that's using the term won loosely. I mean, he didn't win the popular vote, just like George Bush didn't win the popular vote against Gore.
They feel that their movement, whatever, they watch the trajectory and they feel like their movement is more behind him than it is behind the party. Both parties, I think the American people have lost a lot of confidence in them. So he's like a symbol, and they don't want to turn against that. If they get his ire, then it's done. Look at people like Jeff Flake. Who else is retiring?
Oh, there's what's his name from Idaho? That old Republican from Idaho. Man, I can't.
Hey, Orrin Hatch is
Orrin Hatch. That's who I was talking about.
He's from Utah.
Oh, he's from Utah. Sorry. Yeah, he's from Utah.
I think Jeff Flake's argument is he's too moderate, that he doesn't think he would survive the primary vote, basically. As soon as you turn against Trump, that somebody's going to pit a primary opponent against you, and depends on where you are, but in a lot of cases you're toasted.
Absolutely. He admitted that. He went on he did some interview. I saw a clip of it, and he was doing the interview with some Democrat, I believe. They were like kind of doing a dual interview together. And the host asked him, "Could you have done this?" referring to his call for like the investigation. He said, "If you were up for re-election, could you have done this?" And he said, "Oh, of course not. Absolutely not." So that just shows you see all these politicians that aren't running again, and they like suddenly become honest. I think we talked about this a little bit in the first episode.
I think this is such cowardice. I think that
absolutely.
Look at John McCain. You need to be able to stand up to your party. Otherwise, the parties are too strong, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of criticism of John McCain, but that is something he would do on occasion.
That's a guy who didn't fear his party. Period.
It's true. Yeah, that is one thing I'll give him is when he. I think he should. I think he was principled. I think his ideals and his principles were sometimes ugly, disgusting, vile, and he's a warmonger in my opinion. But yeah, you're absolutely right. He was not afraid of his party. He would vote whatever his conscience was, which is respectable to some degree. I mean,
why do you call him a warmonger?
Because he was in favor of like every single war we've ever gone into.
But you have to look at his background, man. He's a career soldier basically.
It doesn't matter. Just because you have some sort of background that makes you feel some way, it doesn't make it right. If you have a background as an ISIS, I can understand it, but I still don't agree with it. I still think it's wrong. I still think it's a disgusting thing.
What I'm saying is I don't think it's out of like a, because you call, I forget the word you use, but I'm saying it's not like a monstrous thing to want to do bad things sometimes, it comes out of the background. Like if you're a doctor, you look at everything through a medical perspective, and if you're a soldier, you're going to look through everything like, how can the military solve this problem?
But it's still wrong, because you need to grow as a person and say, okay, because I agree with you on that point. You talk to when everyone talks to the generals, that's what they do. They always talk about it in terms of war, and that's understandable. But that's why they shouldn't be our politicians. They shouldn't be in control of policy, because the old saying is, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so that's what those military people do. But that's why I don't think that he should have been in the position he was, because then you're just have a bunch of people. If you had all people like that, then everyone's just voting for war. But he wasn't the only one. There's a lot of people who don't have any military background and voted for almost all the illegal wars we're in right now too. They didn't vote for it, but they pushed for it, because we haven't gone through Congress to do any of the illegal stuff we're doing for a long time.
There hasn't been a real war authorization since Iraq, so
which is why all the wars that we're in right now are illegal, and we shouldn't be there.
Why do you call them wars? Are you talking about like the bombing campaigns?
If someone bombed us, is that not like a declaration of war? Like, we're bombing in those countries.
I would call it an air campaign, I suppose. A war.
It's a war. It's a war. I mean, it's not. You can say it's not a ground war. It's an air war. It's the same thing. It's an act of war. If someone from
war has to be against a group or a state. It can't be against like a few terrorists. I wouldn't call that a war.
So say some neo-Nazis went down and tried to blow up the presidential palace in Mexico. Mexico sent some drones over into Nevada, where these people ran back to and droned their house. Would that not be an act of war? Would we not be at war with Mexico?
Okay, that's an act of war, but I still wouldn't define it a war until you had two sides basically facing each other.
But it still is illegal, I feel like. If that's legal, then I feel like if someone were to bomb in our country and have some justification for it, then how much of a say do we have? And I understand if we want to give some of those countries support, but we have to be very careful about that. And we can't just be going in willy-nilly to these countries, sending our soldiers to die there, or killing innocent civilians. I mean, we've killed hundreds of thousands of civilians in the Middle East, if not millions. And that's disgusting. It's a human rights violation.
Well, when you say we've killed hundreds of thousands, I would. What's the word? Man, my brain.
It's all right. You're tired. You've been doing school stuff.
I not contradict. What's the word? I wouldn't agree with that. I would say because are you talking like I mean you talk about the numbers of civilians that have died, and they're casualties of these wars, but most of them died in the insurgencies that took place. Like in Iraq, most of the civilians who died were not killed by Americans. They were killed by Iraqis in the destabilization that was caused by the American invasion. But yeah. That's not.
It's not exactly the same, but we're still the root cause of that.
Yeah, but you can't go down that line, because then you could say that if you go down that rabbit hole, basically you're saying that maybe Saddam Hussein was responsible for it, because Saddam Hussein instigated the conflict in the first place. Or you could go further back.
Did he instigate it? Because we basically said we lied ourselves into that war. We said, we just kept moving the goalpost. It was first Saddam did 9/11. Oh, no, he didn't do 9/11, but he has weapons of mass destruction. Oh, well, he doesn't have weapons of mass destruction, but, he's a bad guy. He's a really bad guy, so we got to kill him.
Then, I mean, but you're basically misattributing the violence is what I'm saying. You could go back to, how about the man who provided false intelligence to the United States that was used for justification for the invasion?
Yeah, but even after we figured out
would he be responsible for 1 million deaths?
I would say you can't say, I wouldn't say any of those actors are wholly 100% responsible. But they have a part in that. There's blood on those people's hands. I'm not going to get it down to a finite number of, well, this guy is responsible for this many deaths, and this is this many deaths. But so many more lives could have been saved. If I agree, Saddam was a bad guy. I would like to get him out. But there's much better ways to go about that. You create information campaigns. You create, for lack of a better word, propaganda, but accurate propaganda that says this guy's a bad guy, and you get it into those Iraqi civilians, and you say, okay, you need to get rid of this guy and figure out a way to do it, or at least to oppose him.
I agree with your premise. I'm not saying the war was right, and I'm not saying that the responsibility isn't there. All I'm saying is like that we should be careful about how we use these words, and like put responsibility on the Americans for all these deaths, which were not only not intended to be, these were not intended casualties, and these were not casualties that were even indirectly caused by the Americans. They were just caused by the security situation, which was a consequence of the war.
Yeah, but some of them are directly.
Some of them are, but you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. The direct casualty rate for American soldiers is probably under 10,000. I would guess.
In only Iraq?
Yes.
Maybe. I don't know. I would have to do more research on it, but that sounds like a little bit small of a number because there's estimated like a million civilians that have died. Maybe that's Iraq and Afghanistan together that I'm thinking of, but the minimum is 100,000 civilians that have died. But that's what I'm saying is, yeah, when you go through some sort of revolution or something like that, there's always going to be civilians that die. And I don't like that, and I hate it, and I think we should do everything that we can to avoid it. And that's why I give the U.S. a lot of credit for those deaths, is because we basically didn't do anything. We went in there sloppy. We didn't really have any evidence, and you can't do those sort of wars sloppily. You can't do military actions that are going to cause the death and destruction of millions of people lightly. That's not a light topic.
I don't think that was intended. I think it was just a really stupid miscalculation, because I mean, and I think it's kind of common knowledge that basically even the arguments that he gave is that like we'd kind of be in and out in like a week more. Yeah. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but in and out in a very short period of time.
I mean, it was pretty close to that. They were saying basically we'll go topple Baghdad, take out Saddam Hussein, and it'll be fine. But of course that's insane. And now you have politicians that are saying, I think it was Lindsey Graham that said, they were asking him like during the last presidentialism, so when do you get out of Iraq? It was Iraq or Afghanistan, I forget which one. They said, when do you get out? He said, never. You stay there indefinitely. And that's absurd. Like, people...
Well, I think he means like created a base, kind of like we have in Japan. I don't think he means like stay in a combat role.
Yeah, but if you have a base there and we've already killed civilians, say we only killed 10,000, we already have. There's a lot of people that hate America, and for decent reasons, because we killed their children or their grandpa or whoever. And we have, like, there's no, like, we can't argue that there hasn't been like mass tragedies because of, even you don't want to argue direct casualties. You can argue there was just that school bus that got bombed, and it was an American bomb that we sold to the Saudis. Hold on. I should say it was either the Saudis or one of the militant groups on the ground in Syria, and it's just like we're just tacitly funding and endorsing these people and endorsing. We want to talk about how we hate Saddam Hussein, but we back 83% of the world's dictatorships. So that's a tacit endorsement of whatever they do. If we're not outright reprimanding them and saying, well, we're not going to sell arms to Saudi Arabia anymore until they get their act together.
The problem, and this is what I've argued before, is that because international politics is so complex, sometimes, right or wrong, the United States makes deals with some bad actors in order to get what it wants in other situations, I guess.
But I don't know that I could more.
I know you disagree with me on that.
I disagree. I do. I definitely disagree.
It's not necessarily my opinion. I would probably err towards the side of human rights, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I understand that point of view, and I don't think that you're like, just endorsing that. But at the same time, I understand that. But I think if you want to go that route, you really have to push those people that you're backing to at least commit less human rights violations, because look at Saudi Arabia.
I agree with you.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia is the huge example, but there's examples all over the world that we. One other thing I want to
challenge you on is what you were talking about before. So let's say you have a dictatorship like Iraq or something like that, and maybe they're engaged in bad stuff like developing weapons of mass destruction. So I think that in some of these situations, like that, basically, if you really want to change the regime, I think there's, and I'm not saying that you should use military force. I'm saying that basically you either use military force or you just let the regime continue. There's no middle option, because some of these regimes are so sticky. I can't think of a better word right now. I'm just really tired.
Yeah,
really,
no worries. You're right.
They're persistent. Like they.
Yeah.
For instance, the Iraqi government. I mean, that government has survived wars with Iran that went on for over a decade. War with Israel. War with the first Gulf War. This was a country that basically kept going through wars and thought that it was okay. They had an airtight control over basically the population.
Mm-hmm.
No amount of propaganda was going to topple them. So in that case.
Yeah.
Would you say that intervention is acceptable, or just leave them as is?
I would say I don't know if I totally agree with your premise that some sort of propaganda or information campaign is unuseful.
I'm not saying it's not useful.
I think it takes a lot of time.
It wouldn't topple the regime. That regime has been in place since. I mean, the Baathists took over in the 1950s and hadn't let go. That's a 50-year-old regime.
Yeah, I agree, but I think especially in regimes like that and like Saudi Arabia, it's difficult. But as people modernize and they get this information, I think you can start to swing the population. Of course, it takes a super long time, but I don't know if I'm okay with overthrowing a government if the people aren't asking you to overthrow them. Because then you get in there and you kill them and you basically make more enemies. Like, we're not making any friends in the Middle East, and no one's getting installed as new leaders. Like, we've been in these wars and there's still not a rational leader that's been put into place. So how have we improved any of those situations? More people.
The only argument would be that taking them out would basically end the human rights abuses.
But that's what I'm saying is we haven't done that. We've been at war in some of these countries for longer than, like, a lot of people that are about to go to those wars that we're still involved in have been alive. Like, there are soldiers that could potentially be going into Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria, and we've been in these wars for longer than they've been alive. I think that's a little bit absurd because there's no rational actor in power there now that's like, all right, stable, we're going to take it and make it better. I mean...
So basically you're saying that you should use it on a case-by-case basis.
Of course, yeah, you would have to use it on a case-by-case basis, but I think you should use it super, super, super sparingly because the U.S. doesn't have a good record of doing that. I mean, go back to... the last one that I think could even really be argued for was maybe Korea, but... you have a bunch of other ones where we basically just went in and killed a bunch of civilians and either pulled out or we're just still there. And nothing's really changed, or we've destabilized the nation more.
I think, a lot of these, I think, are more complicated than that. You look at the different actors and stuff. Even in Iraq, because, I mean, there were a lot of Iraqi, like, democratic advocates and stuff, I think, that were, like, basically pushing the U.S. government to act, saying that they, promote democracy. Mm-hmm. And it was very similar in Vietnam, basically. I mean, there was the entire government in the South that was asking for U.S. support for a long time. It wasn't like the U.S. just was like, yeah, sure, we're going to come in and we're going to intervene and kill some people and have some fun.
Yeah, I don't think that's the way the U.S. looks at it. I'm not that cynical. I think some people... like the weapons manufacturers maybe do. They say, well, we're going to make a lot of money in these wars. But I agree with you.
My point is that there were people that were willing to help set up a kind of democracy, that wanted democracy, and that wanted the U.S. to intervene.
Yeah.
So the U.S. came to their defense, didn't just act on its own accord in all circumstances.
I would agree, but I think that the way we intervene has to be super measured. We cannot just go in there guns blazing. Like, the stuff we did in Vietnam was horrifying. Putting untrained people that we pump full of amphetamines to, like, 18-year-olds that we pump full of amphetamines and just to run around the jungle and kill people and get killed, like, that's absurd. You cannot be doing stuff like that. You can't napalm villages. You can't carpet bomb. That's not helpful.
Yeah, that's an extreme. But if you look at the history, I mean, you said that Korea was a good idea, but Korea was a very similar situation.
No. Don't take me out of context. I'm not saying I said Korea could be argued. I don't know that I would personally argue that, But I think I would that was like the only one since World War II that I would argue that we should have even been involved in, or that I think it could even be argued that we should have been involved in. And I think we did a lot of really fucked up stuff in World War II as well.
Like what?
Well, the big one, because I mean we were a pretty small actor. I mean in World War I we were almost not involved because we were we weren't a superpower at that time, and we were getting into our stride in World War II. Basically becoming a national superpower. At that time, I think most of it was acceptable. I mean, you're fighting a pure evil in the German regime, and Japan was basically along for the ride. But I think the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima was, I don't know if I can support that.
Okay, you're talking about the use of nuclear
weapons. The use of atomic weapons was, in my opinion, a little bit too far, a lot too far, really. But yeah, for the most part, that war I can get on board with. I think we should have been involved in that.
So let me tell you this, because this is what I read in the last few months. That basically the United States, if they hadn't used the nuclear weapons, they were planning a ground invasion of Japan, and they were estimating that the casualties would have been around like 2 million plus on each side.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what the casualties were aside from that?
You mean
in the attacks? Yeah, in the bombings. Was it nuclear? It was they were atomic bombs. Am I correct on that?
Nuclear atomic, same thing.
Okay.
I think I can't remember if it was 50,000 or 150,000. I think I can Google it really fast.
Yeah, Google that and let me know, because I'm wondering about that. But what I would say is there are probably better ways to do that. Like with the amount of
129,000 together.
Okay, that's definitely better than 2 million. But my argument would be if they
were civilians as opposed to
exactly. If the 2 million and 2 million would have been soldiers, I don't like that either. I don't like death at all. I don't like war. I think all that stuff is revolting. But
they definitely wouldn't have been all civilians, because Japan was basically using a mixture, especially for like national defense. I think it would have been a mixture of women and children as well.
Yeah, I mean they had a lot of like prototype terrorist stuff with the kamikazes and a lot of women and children doing things like that. What I would argue for would be maybe a third way on that. Maybe instead of, if you want to drop the bombs like that, maybe do it on some sort of military base. You have to at least do your best to minimize civilian casualties. Bombing cities is, in my opinion, unacceptable. You can't just go out and, because then you just get down to the fact that you're doing the exact same thing as, because the Germans were bombing cities. World War II is a little bit of a different beast. It was kind of the first, World War I really was the first war where it's kind of like, oh, this is modern war. You had people marching out there and riding horses, and then you had people shooting gas canisters that poison people, and you had trench warfare.
That's World War
I know, that's what I'm saying, but that was the first one that was like that. And then World War II was just the next level of modern warfare and horrifying, and we're bombing cities and stuff. So it is a little bit of a different beast. So I think to compare it to what we're doing now, when we have laser guided missiles that we can shoot and blow up a fly on someone's nose or whatever you want to say, I think to compare that to World War II is a little bit of a stretch. But yeah, I think even in World War II we could have done a lot of things better. And I've heard, you just said you heard that we were planning a ground invasion, but I heard there were reports that basically the Japanese were very close to surrendering before we dropped the atomic bombs.
Too.
Yeah,
that's what I heard too. But the United States didn't know that, of course, at the time.
So yeah, that's my thing. I think you have to be, I don't know. It's of course very hard. That's why I would never want to be in one of those positions where I have to make that decision. And it's a little bit of Monday morning quarterbacking to come out here and say, you should have slow rolled a little bit more and not been so quick to drop a bomb that killed 100,000 innocent civilians in a matter of seconds and turned a city to glass. But I don't know. Anyway, now I think we have a lot more responsibility because of the amount of technology and the amount of intelligence, and also the how much more developed we are than a lot of these countries that we're just destroying right now, or we have a part in it. I shouldn't say it's us. It's not the United States just going over there and wantonly like mowing over civilians, but we're not. I don't think we're being as moral and as responsible as we should be with the amount of technology and responsibility that we have.
I would agree with that. There needs to be more oversight. But one other thing I heard is that basically the reason that they dropped it on these cities instead of, I mean, obviously it wouldn't have had as much effect on military installations because it was designed to be a massive attack that you need to hit like a populated city core.
Yeah.
That they weren't necessarily trying to cause military casualties. They were trying to delegitimize the emperor because they considered this basically that it was not a democracy in any way, shape, or form. It was the emperor against the world.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, if they could shame the emperor and show that like this would just be like the destruction of his civilization, and delegitimize him in the eyes of the people too, then that's how they could get him to finally surrender.
I could agree with that, but I think there might have been better ways to go about that than dropping nuclear bombs on cities, innocent civilians. But I don't know. You know, it's true. It's not an easy subject to debate, especially so far back. But I don't know. That's what I'm saying. That's what I said a little bit ago. Is I think there's a lot more to be debated right now because we're currently doing this, and I think we're not being very good stewards of the power that we wield.
Yeah. Sometimes we're not.
Sometimes we're not. I mean, I don't know. People always, like, I criticize the U.S. a lot. But it's really, a big part of it is because I'm very proud of my nation. I'm very, if people are like, well, would you rather be from somewhere else? And there's not very many nations I would rather be from than the United States. I'm very happy that I'm from there, and I'm very proud of my nation. But that's why I criticize it so much, is because I want it to be better. And I think in a lot of ways in some ways we are getting better, but in some ways we're not improving. And I'm very scared about what the potential future of the U.S. And on one hand, I'm very optimistic, and on the other hand, I'm very scared about what could happen to the U.S. in the near future.
It's very thoughtful and sweet.
But really, yeah, I mean, the U.S. is great and has so much potential, but I don't know. A lot of times, and a lot of stuff that's happening now, it's on the decline. There are things that are getting better. That's the thing. It's not black and white. It's super nuanced about what's going on right now. But I think we're kind of, I don't know. I think that the U.S. is in some ways like kind of on a tipping point, so to speak, with a lot of issues.
Yeah, I think I would agree, but I think that maybe when Trump's administration is finished, the world will be in a little more stable a position, because I think he puts us in very strange positions with regards to NATO,
mm-hmm.
with regards to China.
Yeah, a lot of our allies and enemies. He puts us in quite an interesting position.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, at least things are happening again with NAFTA, even though basically they just renamed it.
Such a bullshit artist. It's not even funny.
Yeah. Well, that's probably the understatement of the century. He's just a liar, and I don't know. We can get into a discussion about his potential like mental health or lack thereof, but there's something seriously wrong with that man, and the faster we can get through his presidency, the better. But I don't know what you do. I mean, like you said, or like we were talking about earlier, I don't know if it's even possible to impeach the man.
Okay, well, let me tell you something funny the other day. Okay. He's like, he was like, everyone's done something bad. Everyone in this room has like a dirty, dark past. Yeah. He said, except for Mike Pence. He says, the day they come forward with dirt on Mike Pence, that'll be the day. Yeah. Except Mike Pence has a lot of crooked stuff with his brother's company, getting their debt erased while he was governor.
Yeah. What's the exact details on that? Because I've heard kind of rumblings of that. I think I heard a news story, but it was a while ago on that. But I didn't really hear a lot about that.
I don't know. Maybe that's worth writing an article about the allegations that. I from what I remember, and this is vague and maybe not accurate. His brother was basically in charge of an oil company, and I think they had some contracts with the government or something, and they wrote off a whole bunch of debt in a very suspicious way, while his brother Mike Pence was governor of the same state that the bankruptcy was being carried out in. So
yeah, it sounds pretty shady. We should do some more research on that and figure out a little bit more about it. But
I think it's been reported on, but I don't think maybe nobody cares.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely heard. Like I said, I definitely listen to some, because I mean, I don't read a ton of like typed up essays anymore, or articles. I'd say more I listen to like YouTube news, because it's just easier when I'm riding my motorcycle to work and things like that. But I definitely have heard some of the people I listen to on YouTube talk about that before. There was definitely at least a couple stories that I heard on that. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, a lot of things in the shadow of Trump's government are just thrown away. It's like, well, yeah, but like I just said, we were talking at the beginning of this podcast about all Trump's misdealings, which again, get into the gray area of, is this out and out illegal, or is this just like skirting on the edge of legality? But everything pales in comparison to Trump, because every day there's something new coming out about him, whether it's something potentially illegal he did or some ridiculous thing that he said.
Mike Pence.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm saying is Pence lives in that shadow, and he is somewhat of like a choir boy, and just like a sweet guy in his public image, at least.
He's definitely not a sweet guy. He's like
I know
psychotic, ultra religious man who defies all social norms just so he can. But I think that the way he acts is probably because of some experience he had in his life, because people don't normally act as far outside of the norm unless maybe he raped someone.
I don't want that to be misinterpreted. I don't think he's a good guy. I think he's a very bad and arguably like evil, wants very conservative, very bad especially for women policies, and I think he's bad for the United States, but he has that.
Hey, what policies do you know that he's hard on? I don't know.
His abortion stuff, he's super hard against abortion and women's rights.
Women's rights in what way?
Especially abortion, and like anti-Planned Parenthood, which again, this always gets talked about. It's like almost none of what they do is actually abortion. They do a lot of things like pap smears, and they do women's health stuff. And it's in the terrible U.S. healthcare system where it's almost impossible to do anything because it's so expensive. That's one like lifeline that a lot of, especially women, have. It's also easy to get contraception there, a lot easier than a lot of other places. So that's good for both men and women, especially if you don't want to have a baby because the economy is terrible. So I think that's a big one, especially for females in the United States, but even more broadly, also for males. A lot of his other stuff, I don't know a lot of his stuff because he never really talks. You never really hear anything about him because he's so reserved,
I just found an article with a whole pile of weird things that he thinks.
Yeah, let me hear some.
A couple. Okay, one is that he doesn't want women in the military, so he wrote in an op-ed in 1999 that the movie Mulan, you know Mulan, right?
Great movie. Love
it. It was liberal propaganda, but it was also proof that women in the military doesn't work.
What?
Because
during Qing Dynasty China did. Go ahead. Why didn't it work?
No, because she fell in love with somebody in the movie, like one of the male soldiers. So there's too much sexual tension. He's definitely has some deeply seated sexual issues. He wrote another op-ed in 2000 where he said that smoking doesn't kill.
Oh,
so okay. He wrote, Pence's website in 2000 says that they should take all the funding away from HIV/AIDS research and move it to fund conversion therapy.
Yes, I did. I remember that.
To turn gay people.
I remember that. He's a pro gay conversion therapy, which is, in a lot of cases, ends up being essentially torture. So yeah, this is the thing. He's not a good guy. That's the thing a lot of people forget is he's basically Trump, but he's got those pretty words and he's got a nice smiling face. He's not.
He He doesn't have a nice smiling face at all. He looks like a Harry Potter.
Okay, I know, but what I'm saying is he's got the air of a politician. Unlike Trump, he's polished. He's polished more than Trump.
He's got the air of like a superhero movie villain. I feel like.
Yeah, he's Lex Luthor, but what I'm saying, the point I'm basically trying to make is that he's polished. Yeah. So, so to switch gears a little bit, because we got that out there, no one should like Pence. People should do a little research on Pence and find out that he's basically Trump, without the cursing. Go. Yeah. Just remind me that I have an article that I want to talk to you about.
Okay. Well, everyone already knows that he won't eat. He won't attend an event alone with a woman if his wife is not there. Apparently, this is contradictory. He co-sponsored legislation which would have allowed reporters to keep confidential sources secret, even under subpoena, which is like the complete opposite of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Because Donald Trump tries to unmask anonymous reporters all the time.
Yeah, because they're flippers.
He said that same-sex marriage would bring societal collapse. He wanted to defund Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
And he wanted to change the word rape in a bill about how money was used for abortions. He wanted to change the word rape to forcible rape.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, I remember hearing a story about that.
As opposed to what?
As opposed to rape, forcible rape, as opposed to
rape?
Just laissez-faire rape. Yeah, marital rape. I'm sure his wife, if she could speak freely, might have something to say with that.
if
Allegedly.
Before he cut out her tongue. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I even know what his wife looks like, but I imagine she's either a very religious woman that agrees with him because
she wears a burqa.
She probably does. She probably has to wear some sort of head covering at all times when she's in public.
Okay, tell me your article.
All right, so this is switching gears a decent amount, but we were in either the second part or third part of the last podcast. We talked about Xinjiang province, right?
Yeah.
So this is going to be a little bit of a twofold discussion, or at least a twofold topic. So, number one, have you heard of the social rating system in China that they're rolling out?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so for anyone that doesn't know about the social rating system in China, basically, and please add if you have any more details on this, because I only have like a cursory understanding, but basically what happens is all your online interactions, anything you do, including where you go, because they have facial recognition on a lot of cameras and things like that, is basically scored. They score what you buy at the supermarket. They score things you post online. They score a lot of things. And there are people that haven't been totally scored yet, but basically they're giving out these scores. So you basically get like a social rating in China. And your social rating can dictate anything from just how people feel about you, because you can see that social rating, or it can mean, there was one guy, I saw an article they were doing about him where he literally was denied visas and he couldn't leave the country because he had a low social score, social credit score.
I saw like a meme, and it affects all kinds of stuff. And another thing that affects young people, it affects like your results on like dating apps.
Oh my goodness. That's absolutely absurd. And China obviously has like a big problem with dating right now, because you have the one China policy is essentially over. It's like a two China I said one China policy. One child policy. I have one China policy. That's a discussion that we've already had and we'll probably have again. But the one child policy, basically now I think it's two child policy. But because of that, a lot of people wanted to have boys. And so now there's a lot more men than women in China. And so you have this problem of dating. And I saw another article recently about like boys going to like schools and like basically like what would constitute like a cram school, some things like that, to get like dating advice or like training and things like that, so they can find a mate, because it's super difficult to find a girlfriend for men in China. So that's absurd that you can get deranked on dating apps because of your social credit score. But anyway, so that's like super Orwellian and like basically total control of your life. Like you can't leave the country if you have such a low score. But there's an actress in Taiwan, not in Taiwan, sorry, in China that I heard about recently.
Oh, the one who disappeared?
Yeah, Fan Bingbing.
Yeah, I heard about her.
Fan Bingbing she's been missing since July, and basically she has a 0% score on her social credit score.
How do you know? Are the social credit scores public?
I guess to some degree, because there's an article about it where they basically said she has a 0% score, and she's also currently facing like $129 in taxes.
$129.
$129 million. Sorry, $129 million in taxes. So 883 million yuan, renminbi. So, but yeah, she's basically disappeared since July, and no one's seen her, and no one knows what has happened to her. But I mean,
the allegations were that she was sitting in like a re-education camp.
That is
with the Uyghurs.
I would say that's most likely what has happened, because
I would say that's really weird for that to happen to a celebrity. It's possible she fled the country in tax evasion purposes or something.
It's possible, but I don't know. I would assume she's sitting in some sort of re-education camp. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. That's what it gets like super scary with China. It's like people want to talk about some Orwellian stuff. Sorry, my phone alarm is going off because I need to do some stuff. But yeah, they talk about China is what it is, or like I've heard some people say like they're like developing super fast, blah 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 blah. But it's like that place is scary, man. It is not some business I want to be messing with. It's an absolutely frightening place. It's definitely super Orwellian.
Yeah, the cameras are insane. You should go there and check it out, man.
I'm scared to go there, man. After all the stuff I've written and like the stuff I posted on social media, yeah. I'm like a little bit scared that I'll just get detained.
I don't know. It's hard to say. You haven't put your real.
It's unlikely, and I rarely put my name on stuff. But like I think my Twitter is my real name, so. Ooh. Yeah, so I'm a little apprehensive to go there.
I don't think you'll get detained. Just apply for a visa now. It's not bad yet. Yeah. The bigger you get, the more dangerous. I mean, I think China is pretty bad, but it's not bad for it wouldn't be bad for me yet because I'm not famous. We have I think I checked today and like one person had listened to the new podcast. So I was like, all right, at least no one knows about what my ideas about China and things like that. Shouldn't bash yourself, man.
Nah, yeah, it's all right. For everyone that's listening, we really appreciate it. We hope you like and share stuff. And comment.
Listen to everything.
Yeah, listen to everything, read everything. Not to toot our own horns, but I think we're I don't think we're like incredibly intelligent or anything, but we work pretty hard to like keep ourselves informed. I think my husband is of course like one of the smartest men on the planet, but I don't want to be braggadocious.
So is Jordan.
Thanks, babe. But yeah, I think we work pretty hard to like get informed, and like I know your last article and the last article I did, we did a lot of research to like try to bring as many facts as possible. So I don't know. I think for people that don't have time to do a ton of research, if you read and listen to our stuff, that's one of the reasons I really wanted to start this podcast, is because I understand the reading news articles is like difficult and takes a lot of time, especially if you're really busy with your job and stuff. And maybe some people aren't super interested in politics and things like that, but I think politics is literally maybe the most important thing in your life. Yes. People say, oh, it doesn't affect me, but literally every aspect of your life is affected by politics. How much money you make is affected by politics. Your health care, so how healthy you are and how well your doctors take care of you is affected by politics. The taxes you pay is politics. What happens geopolitically is politics. It's almost anything you say, it could be politics. You say, oh, well, all I do is work. Well, multiple things at your work, your safety at work, your salary, those are all affected by politics. Or you say, oh, I go shopping. Well, the taxes you pay on goods is politics. The import taxes that create and often have like a large effect on those goods is all politics. So I think people that like want to be apolitical, I think, are kind of fooling themselves. I understand it because
you can't get people interested in things that they're not interested though.
I think you can. It just, again, it takes time, like a lot of things, and I totally can empathize with the feeling of like I have like so much apathy, or that you're drowning in a sea of too many things, because especially with the internet and things like that, it's overwhelming. There's a sense of just like, where do I start? Where do I begin? Like, because for me, like when I was in high school and things like that, I didn't really read news. I didn't really study about like history and stuff. Pretty much just kind of espoused and repeated what I heard. It's just, okay, my parents tell me this, or some older person tells me this, or one of my friends tells me this, and I just regurgitated it. Now it's like, okay, after upper high school, I started to be like, some of these things I've heard doesn't sound right, and then you start to ingest it on your own and say, okay, so what do I think about this? And you start thinking more critically, and I think that's what it's about. But it definitely takes time, and some people aren't ready to do that. But I think, again, that's why I really wanted to start the podcast, because it makes it more digestible, and people can listen to it and agree or disagree with us. And that's why I want people to comment and like say what they think, and things that you think we should cover, or things that you think we got wrong. I want to have that discussion. I think whether you agree with us or not on everything is kind of a moot point, but discussion is what we need, and not some sort of like you and I disagree on some stuff. Like we're pretty similar in our views on most things, but we have things that we disagree on, and we will probably continue to disagree on them. But instead,
we can also challenge each other.
But that's what I'm saying.
Kind of flesh out each other's views.
Yeah, totally. We can flesh out views, and kind of usually we end up figuring out that we're more in agreement than we thought when we started. But maybe we still disagree with each other. But we can have that discussion. It forces each other to think critically and to say, all right, I got to look at my views, and is this really what I believe, or why do I believe this, or did I get some wrong information, things like that. And I think that's super important. And I think critically evaluating yourself and your views and your arguments is essential to growth. If you don't have those sort of things, you won't grow as a person, and you stagnate. And I think stagnation is one of the worst things that you can do as a person.